So today we are going to talk about an important concept in Postgres called what is archive log mode in Postgres and how we can enable the archive log mode in Postgres. Okay. So before discussing about this archive log mode, just try to recollect the things which we have discussed during the memory based architecture of a Postgres system where we have discussed about the val buffer, right? So what exactly the val buffer is? So whenever you perform any transaction in the Postgres database, the actual transaction is going to happen in the val buffer where the actual transaction is going to happen in the shared buffer, whereas information about the transaction or metadata about the transaction is going to get stored in the val buffer. So whatever the data that is stored in the val buffer, we call it as a val data, and this val data is used for the instance recovery. So and we have also seen like how the postmaster process is going to perform this instance recovery. How it is going to perform the instance recovery? Whenever there is a crash happens, postmaster is going to check for the latest commit or checkpointing information. So why it is going to check for the latest commit or checkpoint information is, so till that time whatever the changes that are happened that are safely written into the persistent storage like a disk, so whatever the operations that are happened from the latest commit and checkpointing time to the till the crash time, it has to re-execute these operations. So to re-execute these operations, it has to use the val data to reconstruct the operations that are happened in between. So that's how a val data plays a significant role for Postgres instance recovery. That's what we have discussed. And val writer is a process which is responsible for writing this val data from val buffer to the disk. If you remember where it is going to write, so val writer is going to write the val data from val buffer to the disk. In the disk there will be a data directory. Under this data directory we have a file called we have a directory called pg underscore val. Under pg underscore val it is going to write these val files. Under pg underscore val it is going to write these val files. So now we are going to discuss about the archive log mode. What does it mean by archive log mode? Is copying the val files from, okay, so copying the val files from, okay, copying val files from pg underscore val location to one of the archiving destination. So what is archiving? The process of copying a val files from pg underscore val location to one of the archiving destination, we call it as a archiving process. Why do we need to archive? So what is the purpose of archiving and why Postgres has introduced the concept of archiving, that we are going to see now. So let's say I have a replication that is configured. Okay, so let's say I have a master node. Okay, I have a master node and I have a slave. Okay, I have a master node and I have a slave. Okay, and there is a replication that is configured between master and slave. How the replication works, right? So the slave will be in sync with the master by, so what happens whenever there is a change that is happened on the master, val files will get generated. These val files will copied over the network to the slave, and on the slave side these val files will get applied. Okay, these val files will get applied, and that's how the slave will be in sync with the master. So let's say there is a streaming replication that is configured and there is a network issue between the master and slave. Okay, there is a network issue between master and slave for 1 hour. For 1 hour there is a network issue between the master and slave. After 1 hour, when the network issue got resolved, so whatever the val file that slave is looking for, that may or may not be available on the pg underscore val location, because the master is not going to hold all the val files and it is going to override the val file. So whatever the val file that slave is looking for that may or may not be available on the master side. In that case, what we need to do, when the requested val file is not available on the master, we don't have any other option rather than, like, we don't have any other option rather than going for, the rebuilding of the entire slave. To avoid such situations, Postgres has introduced a concept of archiving. So the process of copying the val files from pg underscore val location to the one of the archiving destinations. So the slave can get these val files from the archive location. Though though pg underscore val doesn't have the requested val file, as we are going to copy the val files from pg underscore val location to the archive location, so slave can pick up those files from the archive location. So that's how we can address the issue. So that is the purpose of archiving in Postgres. What is the process that is responsible for performing the archiving is archiver. So archiver is a process which is responsible for performing, which is responsible for performing the archiving process. So which is responsible for performing the archiving process. So by default, archive log mode is disabled in Postgres. Okay, by default, what? Archive log mode is disabled. Archive log mode is disabled by default. So how can you enable this, right? So to enable the archive log mode, we need to change two parameters. One is archive underscore mode. Second one is archive underscore command. These two parameters needs to be changed to enable the archive log mode in Postgres. Okay. So now, so by default, archive mode parameter is off. So we need to make it on. How can we change the parameter? We can change the parameter using alter system set command. So alter system set archive underscore mode equal to on. Okay, now the next command is archive underscore command. Archive underscore command talks about to which archiving location we need to copy these val files. Okay, to which archiving location we need to copy these val files. So for that, what we will do, right? We will give a general Linux syntax like cp percentile p and archive location slash percentile f. This is how we will give. So archive underscore command is a general Linux syntax. So through which we are trying to tell the archiver to copy the val files to so and so location. So cp is a copy command. Percentile p. What is percentile p? Percentile p refers to pg underscore val slash file name. This is a standard. Okay, this is a standard notation where percentile p refers to entire pg underscore val location slash file name. So archive location is the location where you want to copy, and this percentile f is a file name. So we are telling the archive command to keep the file name as is. So what archive command talks about, we are telling the system to copy the val files which is there in the pg underscore val location to one of the archiving location, and we are telling the system to keep the file name as is. So when you enable these two parameters, archiver process will copy these val files from one location to the another location. So if you want to set this command, the prerequisite is you need to pre-create this directory structure. Okay, you need to pre-create this directory structure. So what we are trying to do, right? I wanted to copy my val files from u0 to pg archive location. I wanted to copy my val files from val files to pg underscore archive location. So how can I do that? How can I do that, right? First of all, let me create a directory structure mkdir-p slash u02 slash pg archive. Okay, permission denied. Let me make it as sudo. Okay, now let me cd slash u02 ls I need to change the permissions, right? CHOWN hyphen capital R Postgres colon Postgres PGR. Okay, yes. So this is the location where I wanted to keep my archive logs. So what are the parameters that I need to change? I need to change two parameters. One is, so let me check the command. So archive underscore mode off and show archive underscore command disabled. Now we need to enable this archive log mode. Alter system set archive underscore mode equal to on. Alter system set archive underscore command equal to cp. Percentage p refers to pg underscore val slash archive file name, and what is the archive location? Slash u02 pg archive slash %f. So whenever you change any parameter, what we need to do, either we need to go for the restarting or reloading of the cluster. First let me check the reloading. Select pg underscore reload underscore conf. I did. Show archive underscore mode. Okay, still archive mode is showing a stop, which means archive log mode might be a static parameter and the context might be a postmaster. So then I need to go for what? I need to go for restarting of the cluster. pgctl -d slash u02 postgres data directory restart. Sorry, pgctl. Okay, now PSQL show archive underscore mode show archive underscore command. See, right? So now we are going to see what happens exactly. Okay, what exactly happens whenever you enable the archive log mode. So before discussing about that, first we'll see. So there is a val buffer, right? This is a val buffer. So val writer is a process. Okay, so val writer is a process which is responsible for what? So val writer is a process which is responsible for copying the val data from val buffer to the disk on the event of commit or checkpointing, and it going to write it into the pg underscore val location, right? So val writer is a process which is going to write the val data from val buffer to the pg underscore val files, val files in the pg underscore val location. So whenever you enable the archive log mode, once val writer write the val data from val buffer to the val files and to the pg underscore val location, it makes the file name internally as filename.ready. It makes the file internally as filename.ready. So whenever, as you enable the archive log mode, archiver continuously goes to the pg underscore val location and check, do we have any file with filename.ready. So what does it mean by a file having filename.ready status is, this is, if the file contains the status as filename.ready, which means this is ready to be archived. Ready to be what? Archived. This is ready to be archived. So whenever the archiver process sees a file with filename.ready status, then it picks up those file and it will try to copy the file to the archive location, and once the file is copied, then the file name is renamed as filename.done. Okay, filename.ready will be renamed as filename.done. So what happens? So when you enable the archive log mode, once the val writer writes the data from val buffer to the pg underscore val location, the file name would be filename.ready. So what does it mean by filename.ready, right? So archiver continuously checks for the pg underscore val location for the files which are having filename.ready status, and whenever it sees a file with filename.ready, it thinks that this file is ready to be archived, and it copies the file from pg underscore val location to the one of the archiving destination, and the file will be renamed as from file name dot ready to the file name dot done. That's how archiver will copy the val files from pg underscore val location to the one of the archiving destination. Now let's try to check what is happening as we have already enabled the archive log mode. So for that, let me open one more session. Yeah, admin 1, 2, 3. So now let me go to a location where we are trying to copy the val file. I mean where we have enabled the archive log mode. So what is the location? su hyphen postgres slash u02 slash pg archive ls. Okay, nothing is there now. And what I'm trying to do, right? Let me go to the data directory here. u02 postgres data directory pg underscore val. Okay, here if you see there is a archive.status, so which contains this file name.ready and file name.done files. Okay, now let me log into the database and I'll try to create some load. How can we make the log generation? You know, how can we make that? How can we make that is we have to, you know, perform some DML operation. So now slash dn. Now let me try to create some tables. Otherwise let me check, do we have any tables? Slash dt edw underscore app dot star. So we have a table called training. Select star from edw underscore app dot training. No rows. Now insert into edw underscore app dot training archive log mode test. Insert into edw underscore app dot training values archive log mode test. Okay, now insert into edw underscore app dot training cell. Just I'm trying to use the data from same table, edw underscore app dot training. Just I'm trying to do what? I'm trying to generate some val data by performing some DML operation. So if you see here, see where are we now? I am in the, I am in the archiving location. So the val files from the pg underscore val location is copied to this archive location. So if you go to the data directory location, u02 to postgres data directory pg underscore val. See, let me go to the archive status file. See, if you see there are files 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D. Those are in done status and those are already copied to the pg underscore archive location. This is how, okay, this is how val files will get copied from the pg underscore val location to the one of the archiving destination when you enable the archive log mode in postgres. So if val files are overwritten in the pg underscore val location, then nothing to be worried because we have the same copy of val files which are there in the archive location. So that is the purpose of the archive log mode in the postgres. So what are the parameters that are responsible? There are two parameters that are responsible for enabling this archive log mode. One is the archive underscore mode and second one is a archive underscore command. Okay, archive underscore mode by default it is disabled and we need to make it enable, and archive underscore command talks about to which location you need to copy. Okay, you need to copy the archive log files. Okay, so these two are the parameters that we need to set up for enabling the archive log mode. So with this we have completed the concept of archive log mode in postgres, which is very important and you can expect an interview question as well. So do you have any doubts so far? So that's it for today because I'm not going to start a new topic because It's gonna be a backups and recovery, which we are going to freshly start in tomorrow. So as because the audience are also very less, so I don't want to start the backups class. So if you have any doubts, just let me know. Otherwise, we can wind up for today. Any doubts so far?
No worry.
Okay. Okay. Then just I'm stopping the session for today, and we'll connect tomorrow. Tomorrow we are going to see the concepts of backup and recovery, where